Welcome back. So I tried talking about this and I went on for much too long, so I'm going to try again. So one thing I should have mentioned here is I have a file, Adsorption, Modeling, Litter, Unsure, Review, which kind of discusses the evolution of going from this, updating that model, and then delving into these models. There's one more thing we needed to mention. So back in history, we put in a proposal for ultrasonic enhancement of desorption. Some work we could do, extending off of previous work. So there might be a little bit of discussion of that in there as well. So this document is in this Google Drive folder. It's here. It looks like this. So the first thing that I'm talking about now is the same as the first thing in here. It's the student Yashpal Gupta. And he was working closely with Lionel Metchop. I can get back to here. So Yashpal was a doctoral student. Lionel worked on a model that was focusing on the adsorption bed itself and the non-equilibrium transport through the adsorption bed. Yashpal worked on kind of a large system model that followed the cycle of the adsorption cooling and also the integration of solar and some other things, some economic and optimization model. So the key points about the model is it's an equilibrium model. There's no explicit modeling of the mass transport in the adsorption bed. So what you should do is browse through the section in the dissertation that talks about the model. So his dissertation, it's in this folder, it's in this file. It looks like this. The contents includes a lot of stuff, but you want to focus on what is the adsorption cooling system, what does it look like. And when we talk about an equilibrium model, we're referring to the assumption that at any given time, the amount of refrigerant adsorbed into the adsorption can be expressed with a simple equation that kind of looks like this, and there's no rate equation for changing this. There's no non-equilibrium effects, and obviously you can make a model that is a non-equilibrium model, but this is what we're going on here. Adsorption equilibrium is kind of repeated here. Okay. So the numerical simulation. This is what I refer to as the Freundlich equation. This is the highlight of the model is the assumption. This is the relative amount adsorbed, mass refrigerant per mass adsorbent. It can be expressed as a function of the pressure in the adsorbent bed, the saturation pressure of the refrigerant at the temperature currently in the bed, and some constants that are properties of the refrigerant adsorbent pair. So you can do some math regarding the process. This model is largely based on a paper by Cho and Kim, which is in the references here, also in the references in the dissertation. So another thing I want to point out is the paper that goes along with this dissertation. This is a similar piece of work. It contains a numerical model, but it doesn't completely describe it. So you really have to refer to the dissertation to get the model. Here it kind of describes the Freundlich equation, refers back to where does the model come from. I guess the adsorption model is more explicit here. The absorption model cannot be reproduced from the paper. And so this is what the system looks like. You've probably seen it. Each of these adsorber beds is a heat and mass exchanger. So heat is being exchanged through this external loop, either as a heat input from some heat exchanger that could be air or water running through this loop, going through the bed and coming back and circulating, or after you switch the valves over, you can supply cooling, cold water or cold air to go through here and cool the bed. So when you're heating the bed externally, you're driving off refrigerant from the adsorbent material, and it's escaping through these check valves. Not all systems use check valves, but it emphasizing that the flow is this direction for cooling. So you condense the refrigerant, you expand it, you evaporate it, that's where you produce cooling, and then you adsorb it back into the other bed, or you have to build it up somewhere. But this is assuming there's a two-bed system, that one bed may be desorbing, and the other bed will be adsorbing the refrigerant vapor. So that's due to the equilibrium curve here. If you're changing this temperature, then you're changing the amount adsorbed at equilibrium. And the pressure, we're assuming that the cycle kind of follows some process. And the dissertation has a little chart that kind of describes what that process might be like in terms of going from one pressure to another pressure so the high pressure for desorption, low pressure for adsorption. So this is basically a pump. You're taking the fluid from one pressure to another by using a temperature swing. So that's kind of the basics of the model. Now, shouldn't have closed that one. So the code that comes with this files from Gupta and Matchup. So these are just some math files. The actual code, I believe this is the code they provided to me in this folder. So that's the raw code. And then this folder is, and I've taken it and I've updated it to what I believe is more readable code and possibly more keeping in correctly following the equations in his dissertation. So there's a bunch of files here. This Git repository, which is a local repository, just uses the files in that folder, describes what the changes are that I've made in this code. And in the next section, I'm going to look through some of the files and describe what are the major run points, the starting entry points into this code.